First mailbag question comes from Joe Pape. Says, how different would the top of the draft look if the order was the same as it was entering week 17? So that order was Giants, Patriots, Jags, Browns, Titans. Quite the difference from what it is now. I think we would have seen different decisions made up to this point. I do not think the Giants would have, both Russell Wilson and James Winston on the roster. And I think they'd be going Cam Ward. I think Carter Hunter are still your 2-3 in whatever order. Patriots probably going, that one's tough. They're going one of them. Jags going the other, whichever one's on the board. I think the Browns then at 4. Obviously, if they're not drafting Shedeur at 2, I don't think they would be drafting Shedeur or Dart at 4. I think they probably would have seen it the same way and gone Mason Graham to add to their interior defensive line. Maybe Tyrell McMillan at 4. And then the Titans, probably Will Campbell coming off the board here, or one of those offensive linemen. They may have played it a little bit differently, their free agency, to go do that. But that's probably how I would have seen it.
Yeah. First of all, it's a really good question. I would definitely say the Giants are not signing those 2 quarterbacks. Completely agree with you. They're taking Cam Ward, number 1 overall. The Patriots may be trading back because they still need a tackle. Right. Is that too high for Will Campbell at 2? Obviously, they're picking him at 4. Jacksonville, again, going to be a wild card because we don't know about what James Gladstone and that group is going to do. Cleveland may try to get up for Travis Hunter. Like, if we believe that he is a no-brainer lock at number 2 and they won't trade out, why wouldn't they trade up for him from 4 to 2?
Yeah.
And then Tennessee. Right? Didn't they paid a tackle? Was it Dan Moore? Right.
And they paid a guard.
Right. And they had already drafted J.C. Latham. Right. So, is it a Membu where they never paid Dan Moore to begin with?
Yep.
Yeah.
We love Membu around these parts, but I'm a big Membu guy.
Speaking of which, here's a good question for you, Kyle. Lucas Klein asks, how would you rank Arman Membu and Will Campbell compared to the other top tackle prospects from the past few years? For example, would you take them over past prospects such as Rashawn Slater or Tristan Wirfs without taking their pro careers into consideration?
I'm not taking anybody over Tristan Wirfs. And it's no disrespect to the guys that are available in the draft, but until you show me what you can do against grown-ass men, and I mean, don't get it twisted. Membu's been doing that in college, and he's been doing a great job of it. Campbell as well in the SEC. Tristan Wirfs is rarefied air. He's an anomaly. He's an enigma, and so is Penei Sewell in Detroit. I would say if I'm going to compare Membu, I look at his traits first. So I try to find guys in the National Football League with his traits, his explosiveness, and his ability to finish guys down the field. He has no quit in him. He's a salty dog. That's number 58 from Detroit, Penei Sewell, the right tackle. And he's a world beater out there. He can start so many plays on the front side. He also does a fantastic job of cutting off on the backside of inside or mid-zone plays. That's where the home runs are. If you can get the backside defender blocked, I think Membu really invites that challenge. Campbell, I'm not sure because, to be quite honest, there's times where it looks like he's getting beat a lot early in the down, and then he finds a way to recover, and he gets these college guys blocked. And that's what stood out to me in an impressive way about Will Campbell, his competitiveness, his ability to recover. And that's such a big ability in the NFL because these guys get better when you get to the league. So however he figures out how to win more often early in the down, that'll help him out. But I don't have an exact comparison for Will Campbell. But Membu is a Sewell type. The frame reminds me of that. And when you talk about Rashawn Slater, his front squat was so great coming out. And I always look at front squat as a real indicator of true raw strength because it's core strength. It's everything. It's not just putting the bar on your back. You have the bar on your chest. You have to be upright. It's a different kind of strength.
All right. Here's how I would have done it. Since 2020, since that worst class, I would have had the top prospects I had Penei Sewell as the top guy over that span. I had Joe Alt as my number 2. He was just the cleanest tape you'll see at the collegiate level. Andrew Thomas at 3, Tristan Wirfs 4, Olu Fashanu 5, Rashawn Slater 6, Charles Cross 7, and then I would put whoever you want as the top tackle in this draft class. Like those guys, and I really love Charles Cross.
How about left and right though, right? Penei Sewell, like if you were a GM, Like
Yeah.
Panay was only played on the right side, right?
Well, he was left coming out. He was
Right.
left at Oregon. So, but now he's,
But they had Taylor Decker, so they didn't have an option. They just wanted best O-lineman available.
Right.
So if you just want right tackles, I mean, the only guys on this list that played right tackle was Tristan Wirfs. Everyone else was a left. It's just uncommon. And that's, I think, why Wirfs fell. There was like more of a knock on that when he was coming out about a guy who's only played right tackle. Now, Tyron Smith was only a right tackle at USC too. It's happened a few times over the years, but more often than not, guys are left tackles coming out that are your top guys. So Membo, and the fact that not only did he only play right in college, but he only played right in high school as well, is going to be an interesting sort of, I guess, case study about how he works out and where he goes in the NFL.
Mike, I got a quick question for Kyle here from earlier. He had mentioned he was talking about the Bears, and he was like, look, who'd you say you wanted, Kyle? You wanted Jeanty or you wanted Tyler Warren? Okay. What happens, Kyle, when Jeanty is gone? He's taken 5 or 6. And at 9, the New Orleans Saints say, oh, hey, Chris Ballard, let's make a deal. Let's trade back. Chris Ballard comes up and gets his big old tight end. And at 10, the Chicago Bears do not have an Ashton Jeanty or a Tyler Warren to draft.
You got to go get the offensive tackle that you deem appropriate, and whoever's available. It may be player number 1 at the tackle position, depending on what the Patriots do, depending on what the Jets do. But whoever's left in that crew, you go get your offensive tackle.
So I actually had that scenario in the Establish the Run mock I did yesterday, and I went Colston Loveland because I think a lot of the same stuff Tyler Warren could do. I think Loveland's fully. I mean, I think these guys are awesome tight end prospects.
A lot of teams.
This has been his stance, by the way, JJ, because I fell in love with Tyler Warren. We met him. I haven't met Colston Loveland. Obviously, if I met him, I'd probably be championing him as well. But I think that's a great point. If they go Tyler Warren at 9, 10, you get Loveland, because Loveland will be available if that's the case. But if they go tackle, I'm happy.
All right, next question comes from Browntown714. It says, Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, and Derek Harmon are all over the place on mock drafts. Can you highlight their weaknesses and strengths? Who would you rather have on your team? It's interesting because they are 3 like distinctly different defensive tackles, in my opinion. Grant is your kind of prototypical long nose tackle. Like he is not 3 technique. He's not a 3-4 defensive end. He's a nose tackle. And probably more of like a 2-gapping nose tackle at that, but obviously an interesting body type with how tall he is at the nose. Derek Harmon's your versatile, he could play 3-4 defensive end. He could play 3 tech. He can really do 2-gap, 1-gap. He's much more of your prototypical size, length, height, all that. Whereas Walter Nolan's then like 3 tech, pure 3 tech only. Not to say he's a bad run defender. I think that kind of connotation comes with calling a guy 3 tech only, but he's much more of your undersized B-gap player, get up the football field, get 1-gap sort of scheme. So those are they're 3 distinctly different types of players. And so depending on what you want for your defense, you could have one higher than the other. I truthfully, just because of the natures of those positions and just what I see on film, I have Nolan and Harmon so much higher in my boards. I think I have Harmon 9, Nolan 12, Grant in the 40s, just because I don't think he's the type of nose tackle that's ever going to be a Dexter Lawrence at the nose. There's just so few nose tackles that are worth, $25 million a year contracts, just because it's hard to rush the passer consistently with all that it takes to play that position. So that's where I'm at on all 3 of those guys.
And Mike, so you just broke it down perfectly on film and on the field, right? What we talked about earlier with Walter Nolan, there's a reason that some mock drafts have him at 11 to San Francisco and some don't have him in the first round, right? Mm-hmm. Kenneth Grant, who I think a lot of people would say is certainly below Derek Harmon on the field, is clean. And where you have a Derek Harmon, I had heard in sort of my collection of sourcing and information that he could fall due to some sort of medical issue. I don't know what that is, not prying into that at all, but that's a reason why I had a guy that initially, when I was going through, I was like, oh man, I got to have him in the first round. And I started hearing a little bit. It's like, okay, well, if he falls, then that's going to be why. So to answer the question in another way, you're seeing such a wide range because there are flags of a different sort versus the type of player that is being evaluated.
Okay.
I want to point this out. So Trey Smith got drafted, and we talked about this last week by the Chiefs, and there were people that said this guy isn't like he has a serious heart issue that has come up on a multitude of medical evaluations, but they love the way he played football. And I feel like sometimes it's like when your dad's talking to you about meeting the one, and it's like when you know. It's like, dude, just go talk to her. Just bring the guy in. If he can play football, just bring him in. So, I mean, like you said, everybody's got different red flags, but find what works for you. And, you might have to massage the conversation upstairs in your building a little bit, but bring this guy in. We promise you can play football.
Our next question comes from Monty. He asks, there's been a lot of Jeanty to Jacksonville at 5 talk recently. Do you think Jeanty alone would be good enough to fix this team's problems with running the football to get them to at least an above average rushing offense? I mean, I do think the combo of Liam Cohen plus Ashton Jeanty, I loved what he did with the running game there in Tampa Bay last year. Now, admittedly, Tampa Bay's offensive line, up here, Jacksonville's offensive line down here, it's like night and day what he's going to be working with. But I do think when you have a good play caller, it can give you much higher floor in the running game. And I fully expect them, if they did have an Ashton Jeanty behind him, yeah, I would bet they'd be a top 10 rushing attack in the NFL next year.
It's a great way to help Trevor.
Here's I'm going to go through my draft notes on Jeanty, who, again, like full-throatedly, I want to say he is the best running back and should be a top 10 pick, okay? The knocks were his arms are short, so he doesn't have a big catch radius. If you're talking about how he can be different, right? When I say he's not Saquon, I'm saying he is not the best running back in the NFL. They didn't use him a great deal out of the backfield as a ball catcher, as a route runner. So you don't know how well he can really do that. You go back and look, he didn't catch that many passes. You look at who those explosive runs were against versus who they were not against, right? When Boise State played the big boys, how many of those 50-plus yarders did he break all versus when he played the smaller boys? And so those are just a couple of knocks that I've heard on Jeanty that just kind of has people say, hold on, he's really, really good. But is he a gold jacket guy? Hold on.
I'm right there with you. That's just like the hype has gotten out of hand. I thought he was going to be a top 10 pick, but people trading up for him, Jags at 5, this has gotten out of hand, especially with this class. This class is so good at running back. Just you don't need to do it. All right. Next one comes from Chad Wishbone. He asked over under 3.5 trades on Thursday night. JJ, this one's
over.
Love it.
Over. Because here's what I think is going to happen. First of all, we all have to agree this is a trade back market, right? And trade down draft. And so because of that, the trade up value will be less than usual. Now teams have to decide if they are willing to take what is less. You're going to have your chart right there. Oh man, I really don't want to do that, but everybody wants to trade back, right? So now you're trading back or you're trading up for your person. And if you're not trading up for a quarterback, you don't have to spend that much, right? So that's number one. Number two, once you get to the second half of the draft, if most teams agree that player 15 through 45 is more or less the same, yeah, come on up and get your guy. We'll go back a little bit. I think it is going to go hog wild at the end. I couldn't actually account for as many as I wanted to in my mock draft. I had 4, and I wish I could have gone 7.
I agree with you that anyone in the 20s, all those playoff teams that are, mostly analytically driven front offices, they're going to be like, oh, you want to come up from 32? You want to come up from 34? Yes. Like all day, every day. The guy at 24 is not going to be different than the guy at 34 on pretty much every board. Like it's just, that's where the draft becomes a jumbled mess. I mean, it becomes a jumbled mess after pick like 3, but it really is a year where evals are going to be all over the map on this class. Next question comes from Ed Holinsky. In your estimation, do the teams with the most picks face the most risk of screwing up their draft, or is whiffing on 2 to 3 picks out of 10 better than messing up 1 pick out of 5?
I mean, I saw this question yesterday, so I was able to kind of digest it. I firmly believe, and obviously statistics back me up, I'm not going out on a limb here. The draft is such a crapshoot. I don't believe, generally speaking, over a span of 5 to 6, 7 years, that any team is that much better than the average of the NFL. I think you can be bad at the draft, but I don't think that you are one standard deviation over the span of 3 years better than number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5.
And it's the casino, man. We're at the casino together.
Absolutely. And so because of that, I want as many swings as possible. I'm not talking about a collection of 6th and 7th rounders, right? But if I have more top 150 picks than you or we have, but like that's what I care about, because I am going to miss. Ted Williams is the greatest hitter of all time, right? And he connected 40% of the time. Like that's really the draft. And so I want as many at-bats as possible in the draft.
Yep. That was kind of the analytics revolution. Even going back to Jimmy Johnson was when he, started valuing second rounders more than other teams did. And even he was like undervaluing how much a second and third rounder is. And that's been kind of the wave of like all these trade back GMs, like your Questies, saying, we'd rather just have a bunch of chances. We'd rather just have a bunch of chances at day 2 guys than one day 1 guy, because of just historically your odds of hitting.
And that is also going back to the quarterback conversation and why I only have one going in the first round. It is a completely different world, right, Kyle? When you are a first round quarterback, you have that for the rest of ever, right? No one talks about Kyle Trask, who was, I think, the first pick in the second round, right? He was like 1 or 2 picks away from being a first round quarterback, but we all know who first round quarterbacks are, and the weight that you have to carry with that is just totally different than anything else.
And then there's top 10 guys, not necessarily just quarterbacks. We talked about Ashton Jeanty. Like if you bring in an Ashton Jeanty at 6, he better be the Ashton Jeanty we've heard about in Tall Tales.
Also, I was wrong about Kyle Trask. He was the last pick of the second round. My bad. Thanks for not correcting me, Mike, even though I know you wanted to.
We knew so little about the second round of that draft that we didn't even question you. It was like, yeah, you're right.
Mike.
And there is also the psychological aspect of, it's why I've said, if Luther Burden falls to the second round, he's going to be a star. But if he goes 10th overall, you're probably getting a dud. Is that if you already feel like you won, if draft night is your Super Bowl, if you're this 5th overall pick and you're 40 million guaranteed and you've made it and that's all you ever wanted, you're not going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown writing all the names of all the players drafted in front of you.
Yeah.
You're just psychologically, if you're drafted pick 75, probably a little hungrier than the guy who was drafted at pick 5.
I remember every guard that got drafted ahead of me, and I trained with half of them in the offseason. I remember I walked right up to them in these gyms and be like, dude, I'm so much better than you. Like, just give me my money, man. Like, what are you doing walking around with my money in your pocket, bro? And we'd laugh. But if you don't think that that's real, like, had I been the number 6 pick and I was the first guard taken, I wouldn't have cared about anything, quite frankly. But you go down to 20 and there's about 4 guards ahead of me. I know those guys, and I still check up on them. I'm like, how's that waterfront house in Hawaii, you jackass? Write me a check.
That's, the biggest story in that was Ryan Leaf. And Ryan Leaf talks about it openly that, like, going number 2 overall, he thought he was reached the pinnacle. And obviously it's a far way down from that. All right. Next question comes from Fleck. What's the most insane diet of any prospect you've ever heard? I remember Karloftis's Chipotle order was like triple white rice, triple chicken, and light cheese. He did triple sour cream too, which was the grossest thing about that. Want to know any wild diets or orders you've heard from players? Who is it that drank that shake on NFL Network? It was
lineman. I forget who it was.
Was it Cody Mock? I think it was Cody Mock.
It was disgusting.
Bucks guard, because he went from like 210 to over 300 pounds. And that's probably it. Did anyone have any weird diets when you were in the NFL, Kyle? Like that they would?
When I was in the league, it wasn't necessarily diets, but it was like food habits. Like you went to training camp, everybody at these small colleges that live in dorms, we all eat the cafeteria food. We're not going to Steak and Shake down the road. It's all, but if you have enough bread, and by bread, I'm not talking sustenance, I'm talking cash money. Like a guy like Jay Cutler had 2 refrigerators and a freezer in his dorm room, and everything had to be raw ingredients. Well, he was drinking raw milk in 2014. You know what I'm saying? But like some guys are just like that, and they get a hold of some money, and they get a personal chef, or they get a nutritionist, and it just goes, crazy land, la la land.
Last question here comes from Peasy. They asked, did the Bears address enough in free agency to go best player available at 10? Or do you still think there are needs that need to be addressed? Attack the trenches in the first round.
Peasy, we just discussed this, and we've done it a lot here on the pod the last couple of weeks. But I said Tyler Warren at 10. Mike says if Tyler Warren's unavailable and Ashton Jeanty's gone, then it could be Colston Loveland. I truly believe this is a best player available spot. And there may be an instance where the best player available is that guy who can solidify and fortify your trenches. So I think we're in a best of both worlds situation in Chicago. And we're just going to see how this thing plays out.
I generally disagree with the idea of best player available just because
that's what you're trying to do.
So we hear in all these pre-draft press conferences, hey, we're going to take the best player available. And then the draft comes around and, what do you know? They took a player that was at the position of need that we all had identified. And very rare, we could get the player wrong, right? But we saw that one coming. Was that actually the best player on your board?
Best for you.
Yeah. And so the idea of best player available is truly yes, the best player that also fits a need that we have, right? And they never say that. They want you to think that they're just taking dogs out there. Not all the time. And so, Chicago, they need another safety, right? They could use a lot, but they're not taking a safety.
Yeah. Yeah. There are positions where guys will still see the football field if they're backups, defensive line, running back, wide receiver 3 will still see the field, like what the Bears did last year. But there are positions where if you draft a second one, that guy could go 3 years into his NFL career and never see the football field. Quarterback's one of those. Obviously, if you have to back up center and he's a center only, you're not seeing the football field until that guy gets hurt. So some positions that make sense. Other positions, just some teams just wouldn't wholesale draft them until back end of day 3, just because that guy can never see the football field.